Hi. So for a while now I've wanted to get into sort of a more hardware approach to making electronic music, because I make pretty much all electronic music I make on a computer, and the modular is good for adding a bit of sort of hardware into it, but to be able to make full tracks on a modular system is very expensive to be able to get all the modules you need for that. So I was looking for a kind of small, fairly cheap way to make full tracks, and just when as soon as I started looking, one of these came up really near me on Facebook Marketplace. These are usually go for about 120, 130 quid second hand. I got this one for 100 because it's got a dodgy on off switch, so it's always on, but that's something I'll probably fix. I've had this for a week. I've probably spent maybe 2-3 hours over the week getting to know it a bit, so I just want to sort of make a video of my first impressions of it. My initial impression is I'm really enjoying it. It's, for the price that these go for, sort of 100 odd quid, it's ridiculously fully featured. You can have a full drum kit sequenced plus 7 other instruments, which can be drums, bass or synth parts. It's got, I think, like 29 banks of 50 instruments or something like that. So there's absolutely loads. None of them are actually synthesized. They're all samples. But it's got a digital filter, an LFO, an effect section that you can mess with every instrument with, which you can all do live. So yeah, I'll sort of demo how to put together a quick sequence, and then some of the performance stuff I've been using with it already. So when you first turn it on, you'll see this. So I'm pattern/song, and it's bank A, pattern 1. Which is one of the default patterns that comes with it. It sounds like this. So that's, I mean, it's not really my kind of thing, but it's quite a good way of showing just how much can come from this one box. But if you want to access the user bank, which is where you make your own patterns, you just need to scroll backwards, and you can see it's bank U. So I'll go to like bank 20. I know that's empty. And if you press play on that, it comes up with that on the display, which I assume is enter pattern. So to set sort of some basic parameters of your pattern, if you press record, it comes on with a metronome, and you can choose if you want it in 4/4, 3/4 or 2/4. So we'll leave it in 4/4. If you use the arrow keys, you can select other things about it, for example the length, which can be up to 32 bars. So I'll just set it at 8, and if you press play, it'll count in and start recording. I won't play anything in yet, but it'll create the pattern. So now we've got our pattern there. If you want to play something into the pattern, which is obviously the next thing you're going to want to do, I'll start with drums, which is R. So you want part select, and select the R part, and then this keyboard at the bottom is where you sort of audition the sounds. So it's got drum sounds on there now, and you can scroll through with the octave buttons to access different sounds. There's usually like 6-7 octaves of different sounds. There's also about, I don't know the exact number, but there's a load of different drum kits to go through. So to change the drum kit, if you scroll over to tone and press RPS set, you see this is the 909 kit. When you're in this setting, these don't play individual sounds, they audition sort of whole drum parts. So you can hear a mixture of the sounds in this pack. So you can scroll through, it's got 808, jungle, house, a few techno kits. I particularly like the ambient kit. To me that sounds really like Aphex Twin's Selected Ambient Works, the first one, which is one of my favourite albums, and I'll upload a performance I've done next week, sort of demoing particularly that kit and some of the cool sounds on it. But I'll use the jungle kit for this because I think that's got some really cool sounds. You press RPS set again, and it's, you know, in that kit. Go down to octave, to the -3 octave. That's got some quite cool sounds in it. To set the tempo, you just scroll over to tempo, and you press shift to scroll through whole beats per minute at once. If you want to do really small adjustments, you scroll without shift. 145. And to record something in, you just press record and then play, and once you press play, when you press record, it'll play a metronome, and when you press play, it'll do the counting metronome, and then you can start playing your part. You can quantize it using the play quantize section there. So I'll put it on grid quantize, and I'll record something in. So I've got this sound now. So the next step is to add some sort of melodic instrument, assuming that's what you want. So if you go to part select, you can select all these other sounds. And the first sound you'll hear is a 303 sound, so the original Roland TB-303. It's just a sample, and you can then filter that using the filter up here, but it won't actually alter the filter in the traditional way that a 303 would. It's a filter applied to the sample of a 303, so you can hear that on here. But it's a reasonably convincing sound if you just want that. So I'll record something in, same method, press record, press play, play something in, and you can hear what that sounds like. So yeah, that's added a 303 sound. You might want to add something else, so you move to part 2, and if you want to use a different sound, you scroll again over to tone, and you can just scroll through the sounds. So that's the default. There's 29 banks, and some of the banks have up to 30 odd sounds in them. So there's a load of drum sounds if you want drum sounds that you can modulate and stuff individually. There's also a load of different synth sounds. So some really cool sort of 8-bit sounds. All of these are polyphonic as well, so you can play sort of chords. And there is a MIDI input, so I assume you can plug in a MIDI keyboard and play them on a proper keyboard. So you could then use this as just a synth, as you would any other synth. And again, all of these are filterable. And you can apply vibrato. It's a cool other thing. You can mess with the envelope, add reverb and other effects. The last thing I probably want to mention before I show you sort of how to perform on this is the arpeggiator, and I think this is really cool. So if you turn the arpeggiator on, you can play a chord and it'll arpeggiate that chord, as you would imagine. So I'm just going to turn the mod down a bit. So if you want to mess with these, just a quick note because I want to mess with it now. These black names for each of the knobs, you just press function and it'll affect that. So just add a bit of release to that. I think it'll blend together a bit nicer. And then you can use the arpeggiator. I just think that's a particularly cool feature of this, is that arpeggiator built in. So you got to remember to turn that off, because if you leave that on and you try and play drum sounds, it does that, and I'm always confused why it's doing it. But you can arpeggiate drum sounds as well, if you, for whatever reason, would want to. So to perform these, you've got part mute, and you can turn parts on and off. So flashing is off and not flashing is on. So I've recorded something else into 5, so I can turn that on and off as well. So that's how you bring things in and out. You can mute individual drums. So if I just have the drums playing, I can mute the hi-hat and the snare. And bring them in and out, and you've got all the other mutes there as well. And then with part select, you can select the part that you're modulating and messing with live. So it's really performable. Once you've recorded your parts, it's really easy to perform different parts. You can line up new patterns. So while something's playing, you can line up the next pattern and that'll automatically come on straight after that. I haven't experimented with that much yet. I've mostly stayed on the same pattern. So if you want to move to different patterns, you can do that. But just on this pattern, I'll quickly show you sort of a general performance idea for it. So just go. Yeah, so overall, I think for the money, the amount of functionality in the sequencer of this, the arpeggiator, is ridiculously good and really playable and fun and quite intuitive. Like, you tend to, the way things are laid out and labelled, it's still a little bit clunky if you're used to a computer, but I think it's fairly intuitive. And yeah, the sounds, they're just samples, but there's so many in there that there's enough that you can get some really cool stuff out of it. And the sort of live effects and real-time modify effects make it really good for performance as well. So I'm surprised these aren't worth more money, and I'm really enjoying playing with it. So I'll probably do some more videos once I've got to know it a bit better, but that's my first impression of it and a sort of quick start guide, and I'll upload a full performance next week.